Hello, hello. It's Tammy Davis, career aromatherapist, aka aromacologist. I have actually been practicing now for 30 years. I do have a background in pharmacology. I also have a background in the science of nutrition. However, I've been known just to talk about intentional nutrition, and I may actually get into a little bit of that here. Um, My work is evidence-based. It involves the study of plant constituents and their effect on the human genome as it relates to drug development. Now, I've said that in the past, and I've been reminded that, um, well, by actually specific individuals that, you know, that specific mechanisms of action are not what they were interested in because they were studying a whole plant. But I want to basically, and with all due respect, correct that because even when somebody is studying a plant, they are looking at very specific plant constituents. Now, that's not my concern. I am interested in how the plant constituents do affect the human body. However, when I work with an individual, it is very personalized, and it is, although I do take the plant constituents into consideration, um, it is not targeted. Essentially, the body, plants, when used holistically, work holistically on the entire body. That is the true definition of holistic. Holistic is not the use of natural medicines. Um, when all we're doing is targeting specific symptoms. And so that's really what I wanted. Sorry, I have a hair in my eye. That's really what I wanted to talk about here. And I realized in my last video, I said I wanted going to focus a lot this year. Or I think I probably led everyone to believe that I'm going to focus solely on autism. Although I did invite questions and potential content other than autism. But yet at the same time, because I'm also introducing this course, I thought it would be advisable, it would be a good idea to share a little bit more here about how I work with oils and to kind of give you an idea of where we're going with this course, should that be something you're interested in, or just to kind of give you a general idea of how I work with oils. Um, and my thought process around oils. So again, it's not the symptom relief because symptom relief is very targeted. And I realize that I just finished saying that plants have a very roundabout way of working with the body. Um, and that's the whole concept of holistic practices. And yet when we talk to people or we look at holistic practitioners, they're still practicing within the allopathic, the conventional model. And I say that because we're specifically looking at symptoms. And we're going to get into a little bit here with regards to the Petri studies, the Petri dish studies that we're seeing and that kind of bubble up from time to time in various books or through other, certain companies will talk about the study of essential oils in Petri dishes. And so we'll get into all of that here because like I said, the whole idea here is to create the foundation and an understanding of how I work with oils and what you could potentially expect in the coursework that's coming out this year. So to kind of rein it in here a little bit, I work with oils. I do study. Sorry, I'm trying to think about this in my head, and I'm not going to pause it and go back and edit it because if I was standing in front of an audience, this is exactly what I'd be doing. I wouldn't have the option of a do-over. Um, so again, it's the mechanism of action is what I look at when I follow the research, when I review all the research and the studies. But when I'm compiling information or I'm compiling oils, excuse me, but I do have when I am blending, I take a lot more into consideration other than just the symptoms. In fact, I was speaking with somebody just yesterday. He is been working with herbs for about 40 years. And it was a refreshing conversation because it was one of the first times in my entire career that I actually sat and spoke to somebody, and I mean, and just openly about how I see oils, how I use oils, and his eyes lit up. I mean, he was just jazzed, and it just was so it was so validating. Is how I what is really what my experience was. It was incredibly validating. Not like I need the validation, but the fact is that I've been doing this for so long, and in many respects, I'm obsessed with them. Oils are a part of my lifestyle. And I was kind of thinking on this morning how I wanted to talk about oils, and that was one of the first words that came to mind, is as a lifestyle. And when I look at the petri dish studies and the in vitro studies, even with medications or other plant constituents, and in vitro basically means petri dishes, what we're doing, we're studying in a lab. It's cost effective, number one, and it's very, very concentrated, is how I want to describe it. When you do an in vivo study, which is on human subjects, it's not the same results often, more often than not. And the reason for that, again, like I said, it's not the body is not as it's not as concentrated. It's everything that we put into the body becomes further diluted because, well, look at us. We're not petri dishes. There's other cells. There's lots of fluids. There's a lot of things that are influencing how these plant constituents are affecting our body. Now, again, when they're looking for drug development, they'll take very specific constituents and they pay attention to what genetic receptors they're influencing, how the cells are reacting to them, and so forth. And the liver enzymes, the CYP450 enzymes, which is something we go into in this new course. So they actually are looking for these things. And then they design the medication to replicate these actions. It's not natural. It is not, they are not using the constituents out of nature. Sometimes they actually will produce these chemicals in a lab, but they're not the same thing as those that have occurred spontaneously through adaptation and so forth and in the natural setting. The petri dish studies that I was referring to is a lot of times with aromatherapy and some of the books, and again with a lot of the classes, they like to reference these petri dish studies. Excuse me. I don't know if you can hear that, but my house is actually built on the side of a hill. And if you can hear what I'm hearing right now, those are the dogs. They're on the roof. They're wrestling on the roof. Welcome to my life. Anyway, so the petri dish studies that I was referring to is when they're taking bacteria and viruses and they're actually placing essential oil drops in the petri dish. And they're evaluating how the bacteria and the viruses are reacting to these oils. And this is where we're able to determine gram negative, gram positive. Well, this is what we know with the different types of bacteria, I should say, that are gram negative, gram positive, and then we can begin to identify which oils are effective against gram negative or gram positive and or both. We can also identify antiviral. Now, first and foremost, before I go any further, I do not like the use of the word anti because that means against, and oils are not against life. Nature's not against life. I realize that, there are times where one species or one organism will overtake another one, and death and transition is all a part of our existence, but they do not set out to intentionally kill. Survival is the mechanism of action throughout nature. Thriving is also very crucial, but surviving is a result of stress. And stress is when there's a threat. And so when the plant is stressed, there are adaptations that will occur, and then the chemistry is changed in order to protect the plant. And sometimes that means either, deactivating another species or organism, or repelling something. Okay, that's how nature actually works. So when we talk about antibiotic or antiviral, these oils are not necessary, they're not killing them per se, they're not out to kill them, but they will protect the body, they will provide um, that deactivation, and so to speak, and help the body eliminate. Now, that's the proposition. Okay, yes, these oils actually do have antibiotic and antibacterial, or antibacterial and antiviral, antiseptic, antimicrobial properties. We can see those listed all over the place, but this is kind of where I want to get into this. Because I was asked the other day what oils I recommend for the flu. Now, the interesting thing is, even though we know the flu to be a virus, and typically the symptoms are fairly similar between people, a cold or a flu, regardless of the immediate symptoms that we see, does vary within the individual. And the reason for that is because everybody's different. Like I just mentioned a little while ago, to do an in vitro study, you have a very concentrated amount of bacteria. I mean, everything's concentrated. It's right here in the dish. You've got your bacteria, and then you add whatever chemicals you're going to add to see how the bacteria and the virus are going to react. When you put it in the human body, there are other chemicals involved. It's not just a couple of things. Pardon me. There's thousands of chemicals, millions of chemicals actually, because I mean there's different things happening in the human body. There's over I believe I would say there's over 10 million cellular reactions occurring in every split second. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff happening in the body. So to take a petri dish and go, okay, well, what happened in this dish is going to happen in the human body, is ridiculous. We cannot actually predict how the human body is going to react. So to ask me what I recommend for a flu, here's how I would go about it. Number one, first thought is, typically, yes, there is a virus involved. How that virus is affecting your system, and what it's triggering as far as other chemical reactions are concerned is difficult to say. But we can consider oils with antiviral properties, right? At the same time, there's more than likely some degree of co-infection going on, which could potentially be even a bacteria, because once the body becomes stressed with one, it actually activates other viruses and bacteria. So this is the reason why we often see things turn into like bronchitis or sinusitis or even pneumonia, because there's other co-infections going on. So just to look at an antiviral for the flu is not beneficial. You're going to want to create a blend that is comprehensive as far as both bacteria and viral. What's more, you're going to want to have an idea of what would be beneficial for gram-positive as well as gram-negative bacteria, because again, how it manifests in your body. I mean, and this is the frustrating part, truthfully. If I were listening to what I was saying right now, my mind would be blown. I would feel so overwhelmed. Like, well, what is a person to do then if it's this complicated? This is the reason why working with somebody like me is very helpful, because I don't necessarily just want to do the work for you. It's like that saying, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he eats for the rest of his life. So I can help people in the interim stabilize, and in the meantime, our conversation would evolve to the degree where you could actually begin to learn. And we can do this individually with consultations and so forth, or we can do it through a course. I mean, the course isn't going to be as comprehensive, and it's not going to be as specific to you, but it would begin to give you some ideas. And that is the whole reason why I'm doing this, because I mean, I can help individuals, and I've had people tell me, well, you need to hire people, you need to train people to do what you do. Well, the best people for me to train is you. It's your body. And as I said, like when we talk about autism, autism is on a spectrum, right? I mean, in my opinion, you have, high functioning and, and what I would probably classify as mild autism, truthfully, all the way to schizophrenia. And in some respects, I feel like all of us are on that spectrum. No disrespect to anybody who has been given that diagnosis, but there's so many people living with some, hypersensitivity to sound, to smell, to light. I mean, there's just there's so many varying degrees. But again, even with any other health condition, whether it be cancer or MS or muscular dystrophy or ALS, it doesn't make any difference. Any sort of movement disorder, neurodegenerative disorder, autoimmune disorder, mental health, depression and anxiety, even though there's some basic symptoms that look the same, the ultimate experience of that individual is unique. Same thing can be said for colds and flus. So an in vitro study, for as exciting and insightful as it can be, it provides you a lot of information. It's not the same thing as what's going on in the human body. And it was part of the reason why I was so excited to talk with this herbalist yesterday, because he works with herbs in the same way. He actually encourages the individual use and selection of herbs and the combination and combining them, because there's a synergy to plants. And so including essential oils in our daily life as a lifestyle is essential. And so that would be the second part to my answer to what about the flu? Because we cannot, even though we have this idea of what an antiviral, antimicrobial, yada, 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 right? The ultimate goal is for the body to eliminate or to deactivate these bacteria and viruses. We don't necessarily need to be so we do not need to begin using so many different things to try and take out these bacteria and these viruses, because I've actually done other videos on this. We have so many bacteria on our body. We're basically like a walking bacteria. We're a host of bacteria and viruses. So while it's advisable, especially if you are in the middle of the flu, and it would be good to potentially use something that would be all encompassing, like I was talking about, the idea here is to, when we start using oils on a regular basis as a lifestyle, it's not necessarily going to prevent any kind of colds or flus, because stress is a part of our life, mental, emotional, sometimes physical, and all the time environmental. And so at some point when the body becomes taxed, if you've had a rough year, I mean, this is the beginning of 2019, we hear how many people had a rough 2018, it's going to kick you in the butt. It will. I mean, and that's okay. It's a valuable lesson in self-care. So the other component to my answer as far as oils to use for the flu would be to encourage the use of oils that would enhance digestion. We don't need to use a lot of immune stimulating things. We need to be really careful. This goes into what I started out talking about earlier, which was symptom relief. The conventional model, the allopathic model, is all about symptom relief. But symptoms are just one aspect of what's going on, and they are indicators of something more. And it's always advisable, not sometimes, it's always advisable to get the full picture. Whether it you struggle with sleep, if you have frequent headaches, if you have congestion, stuff going on in the throat. Just to be transparent here, like I said, 2018 was a difficult year. I had my butt handed to me in 2018 from June on. Anything that could have gone on went on. And so 2 times in December, I found myself battling colds and flus. I mean, it took me down. And so what you're hearing me with me, this is, I'm no longer sick. I haven't been sick for weeks. It's just that the between the cold, because we got an incredible cold spell, and living in the desert, and whatever residual effects went on with that flu, I have this clearing that goes on every once in a while. So, and so yes, I am still working with that. But then again, so what you want to do is you want to compile a complete picture. You want to take the whole picture into consideration. And sometimes when it's the individual, when we're talking about ourselves, we miss something. So it's always a good idea to have a second set of eyes and ears, again, for training. And sometimes it's follow up. We're in this together. We're here to help one another. And what you get with me is, this is my perspective. As I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this for 30 years. My background does include pharmacology. I've been, and we have a lot of people who practice aromatherapy, and we have a lot of ideas on how to use oils, and there's a lot of recommendations, and this is mine. And in my experience, it works. I've been applying this knowledge now consistently at this level for the last 7 or 8 years. So, that's what you get with me. Like I said, even though I've been doing it for 30 years, I did start out with symptom relief, but the long-term effects are what I'm actually looking for. So like I mentioned, when you're looking at the cold or a flu, and there's things that you can do, and I know there's a lot of people out there that will recommend using particular oils, and they tell you how to use it and how to use it, whether it's in the office or at home. And diffusers are always good, but if you're using a diffuser, you want to be careful, because if you have animals around, it could be too intense for them. But again, even in using a diffuser, okay, so let's just back up a second here. So those people who are recommending a diffuser, room diffuser, they, I remember I mentioned that in vitro, small concentrated dish of bacteria or a virus, and they're just the individual microorganisms. Okay, so we're just looking at a particular bacteria, or we're looking at a particular virus, and then they add the various, they'll add a single chemical, because they're not going to just pile a bunch of chemicals in there, because they want to know. And so you may have a whole line of petri dishes, maybe 20, and because you're introducing different chemicals, and they want to see how this particular virus or this particular bacteria is going to react to these individual chemicals. Okay, that's a great snapshot. But you put that in the body, and like I said, it's diluted even more so. This does not mean I believe in ingesting them in the mouth. No, I do not agree with that. And the reason why is, this is something else I wanted to mention, and I'm going to say it right now before I forget again, which is, I hear a lot of people, or I read a lot of things about people saying that essential oils are the lifeblood of the plant. I'm not quite sure what lifeblood means. They're not a fluid in necessarily in the plant. They are signaling molecules in the plant that can be extracted from the plant. But I don't necessarily call them the lifeblood. They are secondary metabolites. And what I mean by that is they are the result, they are of chemical reactions that have occurred in the plant in response to the plant's needs. Our bodies are doing the same thing. This is the reason why they are valuable to us, because our bodies do also produce chemicals in response to what our body needs. Now, be careful how you judge the word need, because if we are being exposed to something that we are unaware of, and truthfully, I think a lot of this has to do with the propane in here, to be honest with you, now that I think about it, because I have the propane excuse me. So, but we produce things, so therefore, because it's an aggravant to my system, my body's producing more histamine right now. That's how I want to say that, because this wasn't going on before I turned that on. So at any rate, we produce chemicals in response to what our bodies needs, and so be careful how we judge that, because even though we claim oxidative stress is bad and leads to inflammation and illness, yada, 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 there's a benefit to oxidative stress in the body, and I've actually done other videos on that. So our bodies, like plants, produce chemicals in response to what the system needs. And so that's what an oil is. It's a secondary, so it's a secondary metabolite. It is in response to, it is a chemical that's produced in response, and it's been broken down, and because this is how estrogen works in the body. We produce estrogen, and then it gets changed into other chemicals. Dopamine, same thing. Dopamine will get oxidized to help the body store heavy metals in the brain, because we can't eliminate it. We're supposed to produce nitric oxide, which is beneficial for cardiovascular health, respiratory health, mental health. At the same time, when oxidative stress is being produced, if the body is being taxed by the environment, we are going to start producing things like hydrogen peroxide, which is what leads to gray hair. We're going to produce things like peroxynitrite, which actually helps to protect the body from what's coming in. At the same time, it's also neurotoxic. We find the same sort of things, chemicals, not the same chemicals, but we find the same properties. That's the word I'm looking for. We find the same properties in essential oils. Essential oils do have neurotoxic properties. Not all of them, but some of them do. There's a long-term effect. So although you might be using something for short term, maybe it's a cut, maybe it is the flu, but if it's something that you're only going to use for a short time and then stop, okay. But we have to understand the short-term effects, which would be the calming and the soothing, right? And the pain relief and whatever else we're looking for. And then there's also the long-term effects, whether it be neurotoxic and potentially leading to seizures or other. If you already have an autoimmune disorder, you're going to really want to avoid neurotoxic potential. And so there would be other options that you could use that would benefit you. So there's always options, but we have to understand how to select those. And so that's kind of where I go into symptom relief versus long-term effects. And so being able to look at the long-term effects and individualize that and teach people how to change that up and follow their body's leads. And so that is really what an essential oil is. It's a secondary metabolite, and it is not necessarily what I would call the lifeblood, but they are signaling molecules. At one point, I used to call them like hormones, but they're not like hormones. They're signaling molecules, and hormones are signaling molecules. So there is some relevance there. But actually, getting back to the flu, helping the body with the digestive system is crucial. Helping to stabilize whatever symptoms are going on. Again, you can factor that in. There are oils that do have these antimicrobial qualities that would also provide those benefits as well. I'm just trying to think if I forgot anything here. So I went into the lifeblood and I talked about the short-term and the long-term effects, and being secondary metabolites. And I think I got it. If I didn't, if you're watching this and you caught this and you've gotten to this point, and there's something that if you caught it that I actually didn't say, please comment below so I can finish addressing it. My mind is just I'm very as you can tell, this is my passion, and understanding how to integrate them into our life to me is vital. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to say. They are an adjunctive therapy. So while they are a part of the lifestyle, they are also an adjunctive therapy, and learning how to integrate that. What I mean by adjunctive, if you're not sure, is they are not the standalone solution. Number one, because they are only signaling molecules. They they help the body better employ than micronutrients that we're consuming. They also help to stabilize the body, and so that we can better use the macronutrients. But they are an adjunctive therapy at best. I realize there's a lot of symptom relief that we can experience, but if we're going to be using them as a lifestyle, which I highly recommend in order to override a lot of the environmental things that we're being exposed to, learning how to discern what's going on and which one to use, and understanding it is an adjunctive therapy, so that if you can be doing other things like taking medications if you necessary. There are times, this is not about not taking meds. Like I said, my background does include pharmacology. I do understand the inclusion of pharmaceuticals, and learning how to combine the two effectively. Again, this is something we get into within the course, because ultimately my goal, my mission, my legacy is that people understand how to include these in such a way that I know what I wanted to get into, in such a way that actually benefits them long term and provides them a healthier future. And the thing is the body actually has the ability to recover. We have everything that we need. And so even though we're looking at preventing flu, or actually looking to eliminate the flu, helping the body do that for itself is really what this is all about. Again, my antimicrobial properties are there. So it's not like you're not going. I'm always asked that question. They're there, but we don't have to be so intense about killing something. And and maybe can we look at when we are sick as a chance, as a reminder of how important self-care is, and learning how to work with the body, because the body is perfectly equipped to keep us strong and healthy. And again, if it falters because of the amount of stress, whether it be mental, emotional, environmental, or physical, it's okay. It's okay. So stabilizing the system, soothing the system, improving, working with the digestive system at the macronutrient level is essential. That said, the other comment I was going to make was about diffusers. That's where I was going. And so we're talking about this concentrated Petri dish, adding it to the body, and now the oils are diluted because of all the other chemicals in the body. And so it doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to have the same effect, because also the way your body is reacting and adapting to the stress of the bacteria or the virus is going to be unique to you. So that's one way, saying it. So when we use a room diffuser, you're actually not getting even as much. I mean, it might help eliminate or deactivate any bacteria or viruses, potential threats in the air. That's it for sure. But as far as systemically goes, it's not doing much for you, because again, it's diluted because of the air. Okay. And then the other environmental chemicals that are going on. So a more effective way is to put it on your skin. But if you don't want to put it on your skin, you can, which I would recommend, you could wear a diffuser around your neck, which would be more of an olfactory therapy. It's not going to have as much of an effect on you as far as if we're dealing with microbes, but at the same time, it will actually benefit your neurochemistry and help continue to relieve that stress response that's going on in the body, and helping to keep the autonomic nervous system soothed, and helping to stabilize the immune system. And again, I go into a lot of this other, I mean, if you have questions about that, let me know. We go into it in the course. I've talked about it in other videos, but it's kind of, it's here or there. So, but the whole point here is to, if we begin to include them as a lifestyle, we don't have to worry so much about the dilution rate. But like I said, how each body reacts to the bacteria and the viruses that we're consistently being exposed to is very unique. And so there's no predicting how any one oil is going to, if it's going to make a difference. In my house, 2 out of 3 of us came down with the flu. I got over mine within a couple of days. The other person lasted almost 2 weeks. We did use different oils to counter the effects of the flu, but bear in mind, I use oils on a regular basis. He doesn't. You might wonder, well, if he's living here, why doesn't he? Well, that's his choice. I can't, it's kind of like taking somebody and dumping pills down the throat. You just can't do it. You can lead a horse to water, but and it's just not something that, I mean, I can keep on him. But sometimes it's just tiresome. I'm not going to lie to you. So having them around the house, I mean, again, that's a good example of having them around the house, having them being used around the house, but how if you don't put them on yourself directly, you're not going to get the kind of benefit that you otherwise. So putting them on your skin is very important. But I also wanted to hit on here, and I'll stop yakking at you now after this, is the ingestion part. Again, they are secondary metabolites, which means they've already been produced and processed in the plant based on the plant's needs. Number one, when we ingest something, the body's going to break it down. Okay, that's an immediate reaction that's occurring in the mouth, into the stomach. It's happening already. So it's going to be broken down, number one, and number two, anything that's included in a supplement form typically these days is included with some kind of emulsifier or nanotechnology that's meant to enhance uptake. We, again, cannot predict how the body is going to react to that. There's just no telling. So if we keep adding more and more chemicals into our system, we are really changing the way the body's going to react. So I don't agree with ingesting. However, that said, taking them internally sometimes is beneficial. So the way you would do that is in a bath. Again, we're talking about diluting, but the thing is that essential oils are lipophilic. And what that means is that they're attracted to oil, and there's oil on the skin. They are going to be immediately into the skin, up into the rectum, vagina if you're a woman. So taking a bath with them is very, very beneficial, and you don't need a lot in the water because you will be like a magnet to them. That or doing suppositories, vaginal or anal suppositories are also in this country. They're not big on it. The Amish love doing it, and apparently the French would do it too. So those are more beneficial ways of getting them internally. Anyway, so again, this is actually material that I provided in Breaking the Cycle of Disease Management, which is now being added, included. It's bonus material that you will get once you when you sign up for this course. When the course is launched at the beginning of February, you get 2 courses for the price of 1. Sign up now, you get 2 courses for the price of half of 1. So, and as I mentioned, I'm also available for Skype consults. And what you get from me is, again, not just the immediate solutions. You will get, there's follow up, and you will get guidance and training because I want you to fish for the rest of your life. That's what I want. So, anyway, thanks for watching. I love you guys. I'm really happy to be on this journey with you. And let me know if you have any questions. Tammy at synergessence.com. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Tammy Davis 8 on both. Visit synergessence.com. The link is in the description box below. Sign up for the course today. It's not, you're going to do yourself a huge favor, you, your family, and so forth. Please let people know about this. And again, synergessence.com, you can sign up for a consult right there. All right. Thanks, you guys. And I will chat with you soon.